Oh, we hear, and we ready to go. We hear and we ready to be better than last week. That's that's the main takeaway here. We hear and we ready to be better than last week. Because last week just weren't good. No getting around it. Can't hide from it. Last week wasn't good. But you know what this week's going to be? This week's going to be good. Why? Don't ask questions. All right. Struggled with the picks last week, unfortunately. First of all, we are here and we are live. Struggled with the picks last week. Went a combined total of 5-13. So there's no sugarcoating 5-13. It was a bad week. But that leaves all kinds of room to advance. You can only commit to being better. And we'll be better. Because that's what I'm committing to. All right. So, without further ado, we got Andrew Warren in the chat. We got some viewers coming in here because we are started and ready to roll on this divisional round episode for the NFL Football Pick Show for 2024-2025. Broken Ankle is in the chat now. Houston's journey is still alive. It is. I didn't think it was going to be, but it certainly is because the Chargers just can't help but Charger. All right. In 5, 4, 3. What's happening, everybody? Justin, Bridgewater's Finest on YouTube, Blockbuster_guy on Twitter, and welcome to the divisional round episode of my weekly NFL football pick show for the 2024-2025 NFL season and postseason. The Wildcard weekend, no longer called Super for some reason, the Wildcard weekend has come and gone. It was a pretty entertaining slate of football games, a number of which were not as close as I kind of pegged and projected that they would be. But nonetheless, an entertaining slate of games that leaves us with a pretty darn good setup here in the divisional round. So, as things went last week, obviously they did not go the way that I thought they were going to go because my picks were bad. 5-13 is what I combined for straight up against the spread and over under. Only went, 2-4 straight up, 2-4 on the totals. Only got one spread right. And I really kind of made my name over the last couple seasons being a pretty good spread better. Just didn't exactly happen in the wild card round. So we're looking to turn that around in a big bad way this week. We take a peek at the Bridgewater's Finest Pick'em Pool for season 13 of my show. Still sit in 19th place out of 34. 1,598 of 2,274 possible confidence points. It is still a clip of over 70%, which I feel good about. Nowhere near being competitive in that pool this season, unfortunately. Only brought in 28 of 66 possible confidence points last week, which is a clip of just a little bit under 42.5%. Shout out to the wild card weekend winner, Bruin Steel, bringing in 60 of 66 possible confidence points. I believe Bruin Steel went 5-1 picking the games on wild card weekend, which is awesome. That's 90.9%. That's a pretty darn excellent week. Obviously, Tyler's picks still out in front here by a good margin. 1,762, of 2,274 possible confidence points. It's 77.5%. With only 80 confidence points left to be awarded in the postseason, only the top 6 in the pool are still active and in contention to possibly win the whole thing from a mathematical perspective. I feel like Tyler would have to have something happen to him where he doesn't make any picks for the rest of the entire playoffs, and then maybe somebody might catch up to him at the end. Pretty good chance that Tyler's going to walk away with this thing, but 6 people still mathematically alive in the pick'em pool. And I'll take this opportunity, as I always do, to remind you that if you go to the description of this live stream, of the VOD, of the podcast episode, however you interact with this show, you're going to find all my results from last week, all my straight up against the spread and over under plays for the divisional round upcoming in the 2024 season. You're going to find information on joining the Bridgewater's Finest Pick'em Pool for season 13 of this show. You're also going to find information on my great friends and sponsors at the Dynasty Trade Calculator, where if you're like me and Dynasty football has kind of taken priority in your fantasy football life, it is one of the absolute best resources available to you online for dynasty, keeper, and long-term fantasy football, which, as you know, is a year-long commitment to playing dynasty football the way it's supposed to be played. So you're going to find my affiliate link in the description down below. And for as little as a cup of coffee, you can gain access to this incredible tool that will curate rankings and trade evaluations to the specifics of your Dynasty Fantasy Football League. There's a lot of great experts with a number of really good podcasts. It's just an incredible resource for folks who love Dynasty football like I do. The Dynasty Trade Calculator is for you. Check it out in the description of the video here. And you can also find information in the description on joining the NFL YouTube Prognosticators Facebook page. So our divisional round matchups look like this. On the AFC side of things, we have the Kansas City Chiefs at home playing host to the Houston Texans, the top 4 seeds all advancing in the AFC. We have got the Buffalo Bills as the number 2 seed playing host to the number 3 seed Baltimore Ravens. And what a matchup that is. A lot of people would argue that is the legitimate AFC Championship game from this past season. I would find it hard to argue with them. On the NFC side, we've got the Detroit Lions as the number 1 seed in the NFC, taking on the Washington Commanders, who were the number 6 seed in the NFC, who upset the Tampa Bay Buccaneers last week. Washington moves on. They go to Detroit this week to play the Lions, and the Philadelphia Eagles will play host to the Los Angeles Rams, who picked up a very emotional win in Glendale, Arizona, over the Minnesota Vikings as the closing game of the Wildcard round. So the one thing that really kind of struck me about this slate of games before we get into it is we've got some really big spreads this week. Given that these are, the final 8 teams in contention in this postseason, some of the spreads are really wild. Like the Chiefs are laying 8.5 points. The Lions are laying double digits. They're laying -10 right now at home. Even the Eagles laying a full -6 at home to the Rams. Like all 3 of those are quite big spreads. Then you've got the Bills and the Ravens, who nobody knows even who the favorite in that game is supposed to be. So the Bills are 1-point dogs at home. Why? Why not? It's tough to imagine a team being 9-0 at home and being a 1-point dog to anyone under any circumstances. So we're going to get caught up here in the chat before we get into talking about the first game of the weekend, which is the Houston Texans in Kansas City. Andrew says, Vegas win, flawless victory, fatality. That's, of course, the reference to the fact that I'm wearing the Mortal Kombat shirt. Houston's journey still alive, says Broken Ankle. Chargers gonna charger, says Blind Canadian Cat, who is in the chat now, forever and always. It seems that way, doesn't it? It seems like you can change all the personnel you want, but man, that team is always going to be the Chargers. Andrew says Chargers went into Bay Valley on Wildcard weekend. Kat says my Oregonian goat Herbert's name is going to be soiled for years to come. Man, I think Justin Herbert is a really good quarterback. I think he's a top 10 to 12 quarterback in this league, and that's a very competitive list. I think he certainly should be on that list. But man, it either just showed lack of preparation, lack of killer instinct. It's tough to say exactly what happened in that game where he throws 4 interceptions against a defense that you wouldn't think would intercept him 4 times, but We'll see. We'll see. We'll see kind of what the road is for Herbert moving forward. It's interesting. Maybe Bruins Steel is doing better than my Boston Bruins. Yeah. It would be a shame if something happened to Tyler, said Broken Ankle. Oh, it really would, wouldn't it? My heart and those who are still trying to catch him in the pool, all of our hearts would just bleed if that happened. Andrew says, like every Cowboys season, to Broken Ankle. Ravens Bills round 1 fight at halftime, round 2 fight. Seems that way. Whoever wins Baltimore and Buffalo, finish them. Herbert's a good quarterback. He needs a better supporting cast with him. Absolutely. Like, you can't lose all the talent that Chargers team lost and just immediately be like, we're better. It's tough to be better without Keenan Allen, without Mike Williams, without Austin Eckler. And, you brought in kind of young replacements, but they need time. They need time to kind of catch up to that level. Andrew, thoughts on Mike Vrabel as the Patriots' new head coach? So yeah, let's get into this for a minute before we get into the game picks. I knew from the second that Vrabel interviewed with the Jets, correct? Originally, he interviewed with the Jets, and I think I even said it in one or two of the group chats. I was like, New England cannot pick up the phone fast enough to organize an interview with him. The second they saw a division rival interview Vrabel for the head coaching position, I was like, that Robert Kraft is going to back up the Brinks truck to Mike Vrabel for him to be the next coach of the Patriots. And like 2 days later, that's exactly what happened. A lot of people will look at it like, well, it's a foregone conclusion. He was probably always going to be the coach of the Patriots. I don't know if that's the way it went down. It sort of seemed from the outside looking in like exactly the way I just described it, which was they saw him interview with the division rival and Kraft was like, oh, hell no. Like, this is not happening. And they kind of paid him a bunch of money and they should. I think Vrabel's a good coach. I don't think Tennessee probably ever should have fired him. He pulled a hoodie with the Jets. Yeah, exactly. That's what the Jets it feels like that's kind of what the Jets have been used for in the past, which is like we just want to make our ex-girlfriend jealous so they take us back. So we're going to go have a cup of coffee with the Jets down the street and then that's going to set things in motion. That's just me from the outside looking in. Okay. Let's take a peek at these games, starting with the Houston Texans on the road in Kansas City, taking on the Chiefs. Now, the Chiefs had perfect unbeaten 8-0 at home this season. The Texans just a little bit over 500 on the road at 5-4, though neither one of these teams in this situation was super impressive against Vegas's numbers, like against the spread. The Chiefs only 3-5 against the spread at home this year. Now, obviously, they would have gotten a ton of really big numbers against the spread, so you kind of understand it. The Texans pretty well even money on the road at 4-1. Now, everybody seems to be really heavy on the Chiefs to win this game outright, and about 2 out of every 3 are heavy on them to cover that aforementioned spread, like I mentioned, of -8.5. Now, last week, Houston Texans, CJ Stroud puts up 324 all-purpose yards in the wild card round, which, again, was a pretty impressive performance for him in a game that, again, I didn't take them to win, but 324 APY was certainly good enough to get the win. And it's very interesting because if you look at the Chiefs, between weeks 12 and 17, so really down the stretch in the regular season, the Chiefs only allowed 300 or more all-purpose yards to one quarterback. Interestingly enough, it was Aiden O'Connell. Of all the quarterbacks they played down the stretch, Aiden O'Connell is the one that really got them for some reason. And we talk about the Chiefs defensively this year. They've been okay. They've been statistically kind of unremarkable. Like, you look at their defensive statistics, and there's really not a lot that sort of jumps off the page. But what I really remember, go back to the playoffs last year. Essentially, this same defense, for the most part, this same defense under Steve Spagnuolo in the playoffs in 2023, less than 16 points against when the games mattered the most. This defense was dominant in last year's playoffs, and we can't take that for granted. We can't set that aside because look, this is a team of big game performers that have played in a lot of big games in recent memory. So that's how good that defense was in the playoffs last year. It will be very interesting to see what kind of an encore that defense might have for these playoffs. As far as I'm concerned, Houston's path here as a very heavy underdog to win this game outright, it's got to be two things. It's got to be ball control and it's got to be opportunism. Kansas City is not a team that gives up the football very much. So if there's an opportunity there, they 100%, the Texans do, have to take advantage of it. There's no leaving turnover opportunities on the table. There's no leaving third and longs on the table. They need to be opportunistic. Whatever little advantage, momentary advantage, strategic advantage they get, they have to make the most of it against a team like Kansas City that's battle tested and very, very talented. And when I talk about ball control, you're going to be like, well, Justin, I mean, the Texans had 4 turnovers. They had 4 interceptions last week. How much more, like what else do you kind of want from them? And that's totally true. Like, look, they made the most of every mistake that Justin Herbert made last week. However, they might have had those 4 interceptions. They also turned the ball over 3 times in that game. If you generate 4 interceptions in your secondary and your secondary in the back half of your front 7, you can't only win the turnover battle in that game 4-3. If that's the kind of thing that happens against Kansas City, the Chiefs are going to run away with it. Like, even if Houston gets a couple of turnovers, if they're giving up about as many as they're getting, it's not going to, the result is going to be very different because you got Los Angeles and you got Kansas City. We are not the same. No, we are not the same. Those two franchises are not the same. So, like I said, 8.5 points is a very, very big spread for Kansas City. I kind of get it where they're coming off a bye. They're going to be well rested, fairly healthy. I'm assuming Patrick Mahomes, who was nursing an injury there down the stretch, is going to be about the best version of himself. But you do also have to, concern yourself with rust. When we're resting starters with a couple of weeks left in the regular season. This is kind of an interesting matchup. And again, the Chiefs did completely just give away that game in week 18. So it's no surprise, I guess, that it's a big number, but at the same time, I think the number is too big. So one way or the other here, I'm taking those plus 8.5 points on the Houston Texans. It's very tough for me to look at the Chiefs and say that they lose this game. I would like the Chiefs losing this game to me would be a very strong signal that this dynasty doesn't have many legs left. You know what I mean? Like, to lose in the divisional round against a team that you're objectively better than would be, some alarm bells would start going up here. And I just don't think the Chiefs are quite at that point yet. Don't know whether they win the Super Bowl this year yet, but in this situation, with an advantageous, the fact that you're at home where you're undefeated this year, I just don't see Kansas City losing this game. So give me the Chiefs to win the game outright. But once again, give me the plus 8.5 points on the Texans. I think that's just too many points against a division winner and presumptively at this point in the playoffs, one of the 8 best teams. So 8.5 points is just too many. Total in the game here set at 41.5 points. Neither one of these teams in this situation were compelling or strong to the over this year, but 41.5 is such a beatable number. It's difficult to get to a point where that stays under, as far as I'm concerned, with Patrick Mahomes and CJ Stroud in a playoff game. I just don't think that number stays under. So give me an over on the point total here, over 41.5 points in Kansas City, Houston. I'm going to go like a 26-20 final. So Chiefs still win, but Texans cover the plus 8.5 points, a little bit of a hedge there on my part, and give me the over on the 41.5 point total. Let's see, to get caught up in the chat here. Andrew, like a Hallmark movie, talking about the tail end of Vrabel and the Patriots. Sure, were a lot of one-sided games in the first round. That is from my good friend Martin. And yeah, there was. The games weren't quite as close as I think I kind of expected them to be in like my predicted scores and things like that. A number of them were more one-sided than I expected. Will Kansas City be rusty or play solid? Both. I think they'll be a little rusty out the gate for sure, but I think that they're still going to play. Like I find it so hard to like picture an Andy Reid team not playing solid football. So I solid. I think kind of both. Let's see. Of the games KC won, 11 of the 15 were one possession games. I got them predicted for another one. Houston has one injury after another, like Detroit. Yeah, that's true. They're not exactly the healthiest bunch. Nico Collins, I thought, was really impressive in the wild card round, and I expect to probably see more of the same. Although he's going to see a bunch of man and double coverage and support over the top, so he's going to be paid a lot of attention in this game without question. Cat, Chiefs start slow, but I think they control the game fairly well in the second half. Yeah, that seems about right. Other question, will Deshaun Watson injury impact the draft? And Cat follows up saying Cleveland got to take a quarterback. They got no choice. I imagine they probably take a quarterback. Where are they picking again in the draft? I can't remember right off the top of my head. Let me go NFL draft order 2025. Come on, give me the wiki article. I'm sure someone in the chat has probably already answered the second overall pick. Okay, so yeah, that to me is probably either Shadur Sanders or Cam Ward, whichever one of them probably doesn't go first overall, unless there's a trade. Yeah, I mean it's unless they get a big fish in free agency. Like, I mean, you know, the possibility is there that they could like trade for a guy like Kirk Cousins, maybe. Like if Atlanta's going to go with Michael Penix, could they trade Kirk Cousins' rights to Cleveland? Is that a scenario that you could possibly see happening? I don't think the answer for the Browns is in the quarterback room right now. So whether it's by draft or I mean, God, is that a spot where Sam Darnold could go and still be like a low end starting quarterback in the NFL? There's a lot of different ways that the Browns could go with that. But I think chances are at that position in the draft, they probably take a quarterback. All right, the Washington Commanders on the road in Detroit. That's the game that's up next. Commanders at Lions. Detroit having the bye, being the top seed in the NFC. 7-2 in Detroit this season. 5-4 against the spread at home. Also come into this game on a 3-game winning streak to close the season. The Commanders come into this game on their third straight road game, back-to-back games on the road, but a 6-game winning streak, objectively the hottest team remaining in these playoffs. 6-3 on the road this season were the Commanders, but kind of even money against the spread at 4-1, the same as the Texans were in the previous game. So again, you have a team that found a lot of success on the road this year, but playing their third straight road game, that's when it really starts to get to you. When you've been on the road for, multiple weeks, that's when, everything is just a little bit heavier. It's a little tougher. But I got to tell you, there were very few individuals who impressed me more in the wild card round than Jaden Daniels. Daniels goes for a little bit above 300 all-purpose yards in his playoff debut, no less. Jaden Daniels with an exceptional game. The defense also holding the Tampa Bay Bucks in that game under 300 total yards. There's your recipe for success right there. Your young mobile quarterback goes over 300 all-purpose yards. The defense holds the opposing team to under 300. Like, what an incredible combination to win a football game that is. And yeah, like I say, Jaden Daniels showed the poise of a player that was not a rookie, like a player that had been there before. That's what Jaden Daniels showed me in that game last week. I also think it's fair to ask which Detroit Lions defense is the one that shows up. Is it the one that we saw for the majority of the season where their defense was, pretty good, fairly opportunistic? Or is it the defense that allowed 30 points or more 3 times in 4 games between weeks 14 and 17 down the stretch? Yeah, they won 3 games in a row, but they were not winning games because of their defense. And the injuries have started to pile up for Detroit. They're kind of catching up and catching up. Although, as Andrew points out in the chat, we may see the return of David Montgomery this week. You'll have to follow the practice reports for that, but there is at least the possibility that Montgomery could play in this game. In the same way that I talked about the Texans' path to winning their game as a heavy underdog being ball control and opportunism, we talk about the Commanders' heavier underdogs on the road here. I think their path specifically is to stuff the box against Jahmyr Gibbs. If I'm the Commanders, I have to make Jared Goff beat me. Like, if I'm going to go out, it's going to be because Jared Goff has a tremendous playoff game. That's like, I am going to commit probably 6 guys on defense to stopping the run, which I talked about last week. The Commanders against the run, not very good really all season long. What was the ranking there? Again, a bottom 5 run defense, right? Teams were running on Washington a lot this year. And obviously you have a nuclear weapon there in Jahmyr Gibbs in the run game. I'm committing 6 guys on the defensive side just to stop Jahmyr Gibbs. And I'm going to force Jared Goff to beat me. But that in saying that, Jared Goff has had one of the lowest key, but under the radar, but incredible quarterback seasons. Like, Jared Goff has had an excellent season, and not enough people, I don't think, are talking about Jared Goff, I guess because of the market. But I mean, Detroit has done so many incredible things this year. It's still weird to kind of talk in these terms, but still, like, Jared Goff probably doesn't get the amount of respect that he does. At the same time, if I'm the Commanders, I'm going to make Jared Goff have to beat me. It's kind of the same deal here, even though, Washington is a better road team than Houston was, and Detroit, at least, record wise, wasn't quite as good a home team as the Chiefs were. I still find it so difficult. Like, these first 2 games are the hardest ones to potentially find the upset in. Like, it's just so difficult to find the pathway for the Commanders to win this game. Much more difficult than it was to find the pathway for the Commanders to win last week. I didn't take them, but the pathway was certainly there. It's a lot more difficult this week in Detroit against a team that, people are presuming is making a Super Bowl run, and they showed all season long that they were the class of the NFC. Give me the Detroit Lions at home, coming off the bye, well rested, getting healthier. Give me the Detroit Lions at home to get the win over a very, very game and very up to the challenge and up to the moment Jaden Daniels and Commanders team. Lions get the win. However, against the spread, once again, the Lions heavy, heavy favorites here at -10. Double digits in a playoff game. I'm just not going to take it. And look, I reserve the right to be wrong. Is Detroit a better team? Definitely. I think Detroit's the better of the 2 teams in this game. Are they 10 points better? I don't think so. So while I like Detroit to win, give me a competitive football game and give me the +10 points here on the Washington Commanders. Total in the game here set at 56. And originally, I kind of felt fairly good about taking an over here. But since I first looked at the number, the total keeps doing this. The total just keeps climbing in this game. I think when I first saw it, it was 54. It's now climbed 2 full points up to a 56, and it's still going in that direction. I think I'm going to bite on that, and I think I'm going to take an under. I think this game stays under the 56-point total. Maybe not by a lot. I do still think the total gets to a 5, but 56 is just a lot of points as far as I'm concerned. So give me the under here. Under 56 points in Detroit and Washington. I'm going to go like a 28-24. We may need to see some magic here late in the game from the Detroit Lions to get this win. 28-24. Detroit wins the game. Give me the plus 10 on Washington, but give me an under on the 56-point total. That under, by the way, is a pick that I made literally 30 seconds before I went live. Because that was an over, and I checked what the numbers were one more time and saw that total had jumped up another like full point since I looked at it last and said, you know what? This is bait, and I don't think I'm going to buy it. I'm going to buy the dip on that and take the under. Let's see. I Broken Ankle says second overall because the Patriots had to win their effing game. I think Ennis Rakestraw is questionable this week, as Andrew says. He also adds Goff is playing like Patrick Mahomes in his first Super Bowl win. Interesting. Andrew also says Jared Goff could be the MVP. Martin says, I'm working, so I don't follow the chat that closely. Martin, I just appreciate you being here. Like, that's awesome to take the time while you're at work. I think that's fantastic. So I appreciate that a lot. How ironic will it be if it's Rams-Lions in the NFC title game? Stafford versus Goff, 4 years in the making after they got traded. That would be super cool. That's the fun narrative way of that NFC title game going. Kat says, I'll give DC credit. You go for it on fourth down 4 or 5 times, and even with you only score 23 points. Credit to DC, but I think the Lions should handle their business here. That's totally fair. Absolutely. All right, let's go to Philadelphia now, where the Eagles, on a 3-game win streak, are going to play host to the LA Rams. So as we mentioned earlier, the Rams game getting moved to Glendale, Arizona. The Cardinals offering up their facilities to be able to play that game. And the Rams responded with an exceptionally emotional win. Like there's so much. Like at that point, you're playing for the city, you're playing for the fan base that can't be there, the fan base that may have just lost everything, in those Pacific Palisades wildfires. So an exceptionally emotional win. But when you stand back and you take a more pragmatic approach about this game, the Rams are on a short week. This may be unkind, but I'm going to call it back-to-back road games because even though they were the home team, Glendale, Arizona is not SoFi Stadium. It's just not. So I'm going to call this back-to-back road games, even though technically they were the home team last week. The Eagles, again, 3-game win streak. They handled the Packers fairly comfortably, or fairly, I don't want to say easily, but, fairly. They forced Jordan Love to make a lot of mistakes in that game, and it just really, even though the score was close for a while, it felt like it shouldn't be. You know what I mean? Like, it felt like the Eagles should have blown them out. So maybe it's a red flag that the Eagles didn't blow them out. So maybe you can kind of look at it that way. But one way or another, they moved their home record to 8-1 straight up. Now 5-4 against the spread in Philadelphia as well. So again, super successful season this year for the Eagles at home. And I do have to ask, off the tail end of such an emotional game for the Rams, what, if any, kind of adrenaline dump are we going to see from them as a team? Like you have all that emotion. You feel like you're playing for your city and you get the win against a team that I think a lot of people thought was going to kind of run you out of the building. And then you have that, we did it, but you still got to play next week. So we did it can sometimes then lead to your next time out, you just don't have the same kind of zip on everything that you did the previous week. So the adrenaline dump, the emotional dump can be real in situations like that. So what kind of dump might we see from this Rams roster? The Rams generating 9 quarterback sacks last week on poor Sam Darnold, who just got absolutely nothing from his O-line whatsoever. You got to imagine against a very good O-line in Philadelphia, chances are we probably don't see a repeat of that. But those 9 sacks, what a performance by that Rams defensive line. The Eagles will also need a much more robust passing attack against what is a pretty gettable secondary from the Rams. Like, the Eagles have struggled all season long to move the ball through the air. And part of that is, oh yeah, we got Saquon Barkley back there. So what do we care? We're just going to run the ball down your throat and do it over and over and over again. Totally get it. Totally understandable. And they found a lot of success doing that. But they will need to be better throwing the football than they were against the Packers in order for Philadelphia to win this game. As far as the Rams' path to win this game as a fairly strong underdog, or fairly long underdog, I think it's got to be the same as Washington against Detroit. I think you've got to commit to stuffing the box against Saquon Barkley and doing the absolute best that you can, even though if you're the Rams, you are a basically bottom 10 run defense. You've got to sell out to stop Saquon Barkley. And you have to make Hurts and those receivers, you have to make them beat you. That's got to be the way. That's the only hope that they have, as far as I'm concerned, is if they have a great game defending the run and they put the ball in Hurts's hands and force Hurts to have to win this game, that's going to be, I think, the closest that the Rams get this week. Might have tipped my hat there a little bit, but I just think there's too many things going against the Rams in this game. So give me Philadelphia here. I think pretty heavy. I like the Eagles in this spot a lot. So give me Philadelphia here at home to get the win over the LA Rams. And I'm actually going to take the Eagles to cover the -6. It's less than a touchdown. They're a very good team at home. So 6 points, less than a touchdown. I think I'm going to go ahead and lay those points. We're going to lay the -6 on the Eagles. Total in the game here set at 44. Now, these two teams in this situation, Eagles at home, Rams on the road, combined to only hit 5 of 17 overs all season long. So even though this is a really beatable number at 44, I like the under in this. I don't think this game gets to 40. I'm very heavily on an under here. Under 44 points in Philadelphia, Los Angeles. I'm going to go like a 24-13. So Eagles win by, 2 possessions. We're going to lay the -6 on Philadelphia and give me an under on that 44-point total. All right, and let's see here. We'll get caught up in the chat before we get to the last game. Thanks, Justin. I hear you loud and clear, just not following the chat as I usually do. I'm looking forward to the Lions game too. Awesome. Thank you so much, Martin. And the Vikings fans, not Geo, complained they wanted home field and Goodell wanted a wildcard team to be a home team over division winner if wildcard winner has the better record. See, you can't disincentivize teams from wanting to win their division. There has to be that carrot at the end of the stick for winning the division. So at this point, that's all talk. I don't think there will ever be a situation where a wild card winner with a good record hosts a playoff game against a team that won a division. I just don't think that's going to be the case, because you have to keep teams starving to win their division. And I just think that's the shortest distance between 2 points, is doing it that way. So I just don't see them ever changing that. And I think that that's probably here to stay, and probably for the best. If Philly has a good passing game, they beat the Rams. I agree. Philly did lose Nakobe Dean to injury. You're absolutely right. They definitely did. They have plenty of good rotation pieces, but how much will losing him hurt them? It'll definitely hurt. I think it hurts Nakobe Dean more than it hurts the Eagles as a whole. It hurts his development big time. What's best for his development is playing in those big games. So it hurts him. I think it hurts the Eagles less. I think they probably figure out how to work with that. I think Philly versus the Rams could be a closer game than people think it is. That's from Andrew. Kat says either Philly's red flags are real or LA's emotional baggage is going to come crashing down. That's honestly, that's a pretty interesting way to dissect that game. I think you might be right in that. Justin, did you give the Rams 13? A silly YouTube ad cut you off. I did. It was 24-13 was my final predicted score there. Kat says, I've been hit with like 4 ads since watching the stream. Help. Can't do it, man. I'm big time. I'm big time, clearly. I got 7 whole viewers at this point. No, 4 ads already? Really? That's aggressive. I don't set the ads. YouTube just plays them automatically. Wow, that's a lot. That is definitely a lot. Sorry about that. My Commanders are probably done, but it's been fun. That's from Too Punk to Be a Podcast. Yeah, what a fun run. And again, even if they are, I think this is a super competitive game for Washington against Detroit. So it'll be fun to watch regardless. And the last game we're going to look at, the last game of the week, is arguably the main event of the week. The Baltimore Ravens on the road in Buffalo, taking on a Bills team that is unbeaten at home at 9-0 this season. They're also 6-3 against the spread, so they've been successful straight up and successful against Vegas. For their part, the Ravens 6-3 straight up, 6-3 against the spread. And I'm also going to give Baltimore the benefit of the long week, given that they did play on Saturday on Wildcard weekend. So they do kind of have that extra day in there. The Ravens winners of 5 straight games, whereas Buffalo got back on the happy side of things after the season-ending loss. They pick up the win last week. So this is kind of an interesting battle, given the way these two teams the results they found last week. It's a battle of the game was over at halftime, which is the case for Baltimore, and they ran away from them in the second half, which was the case with Buffalo. For Buffalo, like, that game was competitive for the first half, and then after that, it was not competitive anymore. After the second half, Buffalo was like, oh, right, we're the Bills, and then they just kind of ran away with things. Whereas, like, for Baltimore was up 21-0 at the half. Fait accompli. Like that jam was done at that point. So just kind of interesting because these two teams got here in 2 very different ways. They did combine, however, for 509 yards rushing. 509 rushing yards combined between these two teams last week. And it's very interesting because on the season, the Baltimore Ravens were the number 1 rated run defense in the NFL, statistically speaking. As a matter of fact, they are one of only 2 teams in the NFL who allowed fewer than 4 yards per carry in the run game this season on the defensive side. They were the only team in the NFL, not only the only team in the NFL to allow under 90 yards rushing per game, they were the only team in the NFL to allow below 85 rushing yards per game. So the run defense for the Ravens has been on point all season long. And you're going up against a team in Buffalo that wanted to run the ball last week and did so effectively. You are also a team that wants to run the ball and do so very effectively with King Henry back there. So what a matchup of the run game between these two teams this week. I think I can siphon this game down to a very easy outcome. Whoever the better quarterback is Sunday night wins the game. It's not going to be a discussion of which quarterback is better overall. It's a discussion of which quarterback is better Sunday night. And whichever one of those 2 quarterbacks is better Sunday night is going to win this football game. I think that's how close this game is. I think it's going to be an offensive showcase. I think we see the most points of the divisional round come in this football game. No disrespect to the defenses, but I do feel like the offenses are going to come to thrive in this football game. It's going to be Buffalo Sunday night. It's going to be cold. I don't know what the weather report is right off the top of my head, but it's going to be cold. And I think this is just going to be an absolute spotlight of like, if you have a non-football fan and you want to introduce them to the game of football, this is one of those football games that you want to watch, because I think it's going to be fun. It's going to be explosive, high offensive game, lots of points, superstars on both sides, both teams, and both sides of the ball. I think this is the game you want to show a non-football fan to convert them to being a football fan. Interestingly enough, the Bills, as I mentioned off the top of the show, are 1-point dogs in this game. So you look at them, they have not been a dog at home all season long, and they're 9-0, and they're a dog. That's how much Vegas respects the Baltimore Ravens in this spot. To look at a team that, like, you didn't lose a single game at home this year, and you're a dog to these guys. So, yikes. Oh, Andrew chips in -3 with a 40% chance of snow in Ravens versus Bills. I see again. Whoever is in your life that is not a football fan, sit them down in front of this game, because oh my God, what fun this is going to be. That does not change how I feel about the game, by the way, the weather report, but oh boy, like, you want them to watch this game for sure. By a final score of 30-27, again, offensive showcase, 30-27, give me the Baltimore Ravens at home, or sorry, on the road, to beat Buffalo and go to the AFC title game, where they will play the Kansas City Chiefs in Kansas City. I like the Baltimore Ravens to get the win here. I love the way they're playing football right now. That is a well-oiled machine, and I just feel like it's their time. And I think it probably could be their time to upset the Chiefs and go to the Super Bowl as well. But we won't get ahead of ourselves. Baltimore in Buffalo beats the Bills and goes to the AFC title game. So obviously, since I like Baltimore to win, lay the -1 on the road Ravens. Total in this game set at 51.5 points. I've already told you I like the over in this one. These two teams in this situation, Buffalo at home, Baltimore on the road, combined to hit 13 of 18 overs this season. Yes, I understand it's going to be cold. Yes, it might be snowy, but I still like the over in this one. Over 51.5 points in Baltimore, Buffalo. Let's go again, 30-27 in favor of the Ravens. Ravens win, Ravens cover, over on the points. There you have it, folks. This episode will be a little bit shorter than last week, although not by much. Little bit shorter. Let's go over the picks here with you one more time. I've got the Kansas City Chiefs beating the Houston Texans in Kansas City 26-20. So I'm taking the +8.5 on the Houston Texans in a game that goes over 41.5 points. I've got the Detroit Lions beating the Washington Commanders 28-24. So I'm taking the +10 on the Commanders and under the 56-point total. I've got the Philadelphia Eagles over the Los Angeles Rams 24-13. I'm laying the -6 on Philadelphia in a game that stays under the 44-point total. And I got the Baltimore Ravens 30, the Buffalo Bills 27 in Buffalo, laying the -1 on the Ravens and taking the over on the 51.5 points. That's it, ladies and gentlemen. Those are my picks in the divisional round, looking to make amends for a really, really tough week from last week. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to the episode, stopping into the live show, listening to the podcast, interacting with the show however you do, hitting me up on Twitter to talk football. I love all that stuff. That's it for me, Justin, Bridgewater's Finest on YouTube, Blockbuster_guy on Twitter, and we will see you again for the AFC and NFC Championship games. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's the show. So once again, I got KC, Detroit, Philly, and Baltimore picking up the wins, taking the points in 2 of the games, laying the points in 2 others. I got 2 unders and 2 overs. I guess I'm playing it right down the middle this week. Again, just trying to make up for really struggling in the wild card round. So, if we go, so what do we got? 4 games, we got 12 picks. If I can go 8-4, that'll at least kind of put me in position where I might be able to get back over 500 by the end of the playoffs. I think 8-4 is reasonable. Feels like a CFL week, by the way, with only 4 games on the slate. It reminds me of my beloved CFL, which will be back before we know it. Let's get out of here on this. Let's see. I find there are a lot more ads if I have to rewatch the show. Have the Dynasty Trade Calculator get some video ads? I should hit them up about that, actually. Would be another buffalo choke while I enjoy some buffalo wings, one of my favorite sauces to put in chicken. Very nice. Let's see. Buffalo has not lost a home game this year, but Josh Allen has also never won a playoff game against a team that won their division. One of these streaks will end. I think if the Ravens win and play Kansas City the following week, Baltimore will be the favorites. Let's see. I like the Ravens personally. Would like to see them go all the way, but I also like to see Buffalo do good too. Kansas City just stands in the way. Gorian in the chat. I am so glad to hear you say that. I assume probably taking the Ravens. If Buffalo wins, will this be the Sean McDermott nail in the coffin? Probably not. That would be tough. It's not like a Mike McCarthy situation. I don't know. That's interesting though. I mean, it's possible, but I feel like they would regret that. Thanks for another great show. Houston loses by 11 plus, says Gorian. Justin, sorry about the Packers. How about a 16-team playoffs in the future, 1 versus 8? So I actually would take that a step further. My ideal playoff format, and nobody's going to like this. Nobody's going to like this at all. My ideal playoff format is a legitimately no buys, no playoff buys at all. 1 versus 16, regardless of conference. That's my favorite. The overall 1 seed in the league plays the number 16, regardless of conference. 2 plays 15. It's like the NCAA tournament. 3 plays 14. And again, regardless of conference. If 11 NFC teams make it and only 5 AFC teams make it, so be it. I think you would have to, the only thing you would have to kind of probably delineate with that, because you still have to incentivize teams to win divisions, is the division winning teams would probably have to go 1 through 8. I guess is probably the concession, I guess, that you would have to give in that scenario, because you do still have to give teams a reason to want to win the division. So the 8 division winners, I guess, would be seeded 1 through 8. But the rest of it, I just want to see the best teams. So for me, again, regardless of conference, that's the way I would do it. But again, very few people, I think, would actually like that in practice. So Gorian likes that a lot. Andrew kind of likes it. Cat hates it. And that's about the way I would expect the reaction to go. Okay, folks, give you a couple extra minutes here. We're going to get out of here. And those are my picks for the divisional round. Again, hoping to do better certainly than I did last week. I hope you enjoy the games this week. And we'll be right back here next Wednesday for the AFC and NFC title games. I am obviously predicting a Baltimore, Kansas City, and a Detroit, Philadelphia AFC and NFC championship game. Enjoy the games this week, folks. We will see you again next week. Thank you as always. And we will see you again next week. See ya.